In the beginning of the joint project, we theorized the EU foreign and security policy as a multi-actor, multi-sector, and multi-layered. In short, that the EU is a multi-actor entity means that several actors, from EU institutions to member states, participate in the formation of the EU foreign and security policy. That the EU is a multi-sector entity means that the EU deploys several instruments in order to address crises and conflicts. The EU, for example, takes diplomatic action, provides aid, applies sanctions, or deploys military and civilian missions. Finally, multilayeredness qualifies how EU foreign and security policy unfolds. It does so in partnership with several actors at different levels of governance: international, regional, national, local, and it takes action in a sustained way, over prolonged periods. Due to the complexity of EU foreign and security policy, in which diverse actors, sectors, and partners are involved, the key question for the joint project over more than 2 years has been to suggest how could the EU be more joined up. Over the years, EU officials have tried to create the conditions for a more integrated foreign and security policy. For example, Mogherini, in the EU global strategy, used the idea of promoting resilience to the East and South to create a common language among different policy fields. Whereas more recently, the strategic compass has been useful as a shared assessment of the EU's strategic environment, as well as a coherent plan of action. This is a tremendous challenge. As we have argued, drawing on several case studies, 3 structural constraints, multipolar competition, regional fragmentation, and the disagreement between member states, have prevented more coherent action. Yet, the aspirations of greater unity have become true after Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Josep Borrell and other EU officials have argued that the Russia-Ukraine war has impulsed Europe's geopolitical awakening. The biggest challenge to Europe's security since the Second World War has triggered a very bold, unprecedented, and coherent response. The EU has shown determination to apply unprecedented sanctions, has provided massive support to Ukraine, including the financing and delivery of military equipment. If we read this move through joint lens, we can argue that indeed the EU's geopolitical awakening means that the EU has managed to take unprecedented joined-up action. Different actors have acted together, showing commitment and using a very similar rhetoric of opposition against Russia's action and an unrelentless support for Ukraine. The EU has also used several instruments, 10 packages of sanctions, provided humanitarian and financial support to Ukraine, and supported the country's recovery efforts. Some critical scholars and commentators, however, have disagreed with this perspective and sustain that the EU is neither a geopolitical actor nor has an integrated EU foreign and security policy. This reading comes primarily from those who think that the EU should militarily engage with Russia or should provide even more offensive weapons to Ukraine. They see the EU as weak and divided. In my opinion, they mistake geopolitics for the boldest and most aggressive possible action, and they see any potential disagreement, question or critique in the EU or in member states' parliaments as a burden to EU's foreign and security policy, rather than as a constructive development. So, given this geopolitical awakening, which is also the awakening of a more joined-up EU foreign and security policy, I would like to pose 2 questions that I believe are relevant for current debates. The first question is whether this unity is sustainable over the long term. Showing unity in an emergency or when facing an existential security problem is easier than building a joined-up security policy for the ages. A war of attrition raises many divisive questions. The day after the war, more questions still. For instance, the integration of Georgia, Moldova, and Ukraine into the EU, or the future relations with Russia. The second question has to do with geopolitics. The more the EU is joined up, the more the EU seems dominated by those who defend a more aggressive and bolder foreign and security policy. The ambition to integrate the EU around its culture and peace ideals, or the projections of norms and values in foreign policy, have been overshadowed by a more defensive and inward-looking foreign policy. EU officials argue that the EU needs to be geopolitical to defend a liberal international order. That is their promise, but the question is pressing. Will the EU's unity come true as it distances from its normative ideals?